Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Accelerate Your Calypso Great webinar. Your webinar will begin very shortly. In the meantime, while we wait for everyone to join, we'll play a very short video.
The future of business depends on the transformation of yesterday's legacies. Luxoft meets the challenges of today by developing the solutions of tomorrow. Because innovation lies in our core, it allows us to reinvent and not just respond. Domain integrity, coupled with ability to scale, is how we define our purpose. Think about tomorrow's autonomous driving landscape. Digital companions that always steer you in the right direction. We will empower the mobility revolution to put stunning user experiences on the road. Imagine the patients of the future, connected to 24/7 health monitoring systems and treated by algorithms that can predict and even prevent diseases. We can help our clients to improve patients' experiences and drive them into the digital era. Our perception of money might not change in the future, but everything else will. Luxoft helps integrate businesses with advanced technologies that deliver an unparalleled experience. Using our blockchain expertise, we help to remove data silos and improve trust. We are taking full advantage of the growing symbiosis between human and AI talents. With self-learning machines and robots on our side, we will be able to shape the world of tomorrow. With our client-centric approach, Luxoft quickly connects the dots to identify a perfect solution, from development to delivery. We offer technology hope. We embrace customer fear, and we drive the experience of tomorrow. And because we live and breathe technology, we see what others have missed.
Thank you, Tatiana. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Prakash Anthony, and I welcome you all for this webinar on project simplification, where we're going to walk you through not just the methodology, as in what is Project Simplify, why do we need Project Simplify, but as well as show you a demonstration of an accelerator that Luxoft built. In terms of today's agenda, so I'm going to do a quick introduction of the panelists who are going to talk and present the project simplification as a concept as well as the demo, followed by an overview of the simplification by Calypso's Mark Green. Excuse me. And then I'll come back in to talk about the accelerator that we have built, followed by a demo. Then we open the floor for any Q&A. Today we have with us Mark Green, who heads up the customer success operations at Calypso. Mark joined Calypso last summer, but he's been within the financial services technology space for the last 20 odd years. And before joining Calypso, he was the global head of customer support at FIS. So welcome, Mark. We also have with us Vinayak Khetmar, Madhavi, Singh, and Chirag, Seth, who are our Calypso SMEs and specialists who've been instrumental in designing and developing the accelerator that you're going to see today. And finally, we have Philip Carr, who's the Global Head of Alliances for Calypso. And that's it. So in terms of myself, Prakash Anthony, I head up the Calypso practice globally for Luxoft. I've been doing Calypso upgrades and implementations for the last 15, 16 years now. And I have about 21 years of capital markets experience. So with that introductions, I'm going to invite Mark Green to provide us with an overview from Calypso's perspective of what Project Simplify is. Mark, over to you.
Thanks, Prakash, and thank you to Luxoft for letting me join this session today. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Simplify is one of the most important initiatives at Calypso today. I'm very happy to be working with Luxoft on this and talking to you on it. Some of you have probably heard from me in some form already over the course of the last 12 months. So hopefully you've already got a good idea of why we're here today and what we're going to be talking about. Before Prakash and the guys start sharing with you some of the detail of their approach to this Simplify operating model and how they can make this a reality for you, I wanted to spend 10 minutes to quickly recap why we at Calypso are pushing this, and also to give you a bit of an update on the progress we've made over the last 12 months. So I talk to a lot of clients across the Simplify spectrum on a very regular basis, including those that have adopted it and also those that are yet to start and trying to figure out how they do it. I'd say the consistent message from all of them is that they understand the benefits and why we're doing it, but they also worry about the challenge of actually getting there and achieving it. So for me, it's really important that you build a good practice that you can refine and evolve over time. And I'm glad to say that that's exactly what Luxoft have taken away from that simplified concept as well. And it's what they're going to be talking to you about today. So to get to the recap, at a very high level, Calypso have moved from delivering versions of the software that didn't evolve after their initial release pretty much. And therefore, once you had those versions, you have to request any specific changes on top of that static version of the software. This means you're moving further away from the latest iteration of the Calypso software, and therefore creating a bigger journey back to the latest version during your upgrades. The longer you leave it, the bigger that jump becomes. We're now providing a fully updated version of the same software once every month. And the ask of clients is to take these monthly releases on a regular basis, at minimum once a year, to keep up to date with all of our evolutions, and not only the changes that are specific to yourselves. The major difference here, hopefully, is clear to everyone, and that is you'll never fall too far behind the latest versions of the software, and therefore never face that massive upgrade effort again. We can move on to the next slide. So I just mentioned that big benefit of never falling too far behind and not facing those big upgrades challenges again. But I also want you to get more out of this new model than that single, albeit very important benefit. This slide highlights some of those areas and benefits that I believe you will start to see. And I'm actually already starting to hear that from the clients that have adopted this model. The reduced risk speaks for itself. The big part of that is avoiding those big upgrades. Going live over a weekend after you've adopted, had to sort of update 3 or 4 years worth of change is always a big risk. Today's presentation by Luxoft will show how you can turn that upgrade practice into a very efficient exercise, dramatically reducing the time that you spend over time, allowing you to make your decisions on when to upgrade or to rebase based on your business needs, rather than because we, Calypso, the vendor, tells you to upgrade. An indirect benefit that everyone is seeing and going to continue seeing is closely linked to the quality of the software. So our monthly releases are something we're very much focused on and improving the quality. And I think that quality is starting to show and will grow over time. The more clients that take these releases on a regular basis means the more validation it gets. You can be assured when you take these monthly releases that everything in them, apart from the latest changes literally that have come out in that month's change, is getting the ultimate test available, which is clients testing it in their environments and ultimately running it in their production environments. And then for those new changes that we're releasing each month, that are coming out in those monthly releases, we ourselves at Calypso are now be able to spend more time focus on the quality of those changes, really improving in areas like continuous testing throughout the development cycle, and also testing automation. And as I talk to clients that are taking these monthly releases, I'm certainly starting to hear the feedback that the quality is improving. We can move on one more slide. So this slide shows how we're going to manage our major versions going forwards. And I think this is an important one for everyone to understand, so that then you can start making the right upgrade choices for your business. So even though I've just explained that we push out new versions every month, we're still going to roll out new major versions every 2 years. So one major new version every 2 years. Key thing here is that we'll always have 2 major versions fully supported out there. So today it's 15.2 and 16.1. And then each of those major versions will have a full 4-year lifespan. getting these monthly releases all the way through. That gives you the flexibility to remain on a single major version for the full 4 years, moving through the monthly releases, or to move through the major versions every 2 years, or in fact, anywhere in between. Another key observation here is that the planned end of life for all versions prior to 16.1 is at the end of next year, 2021, so the end of 2021. So that means that anyone on the versions other than 16.1 really needs to be considering their next steps, which would be an upgrade to 16.1 next year. We can move on to my last slide, please. So this is a snapshot of where we stand today across our global client base. I wanted to, as I mentioned at the start, I wanted to give you an update of where we've come. So in terms of getting clients onto these supported monthly release versions and this operating model, you can see on the left a very positive trend of clients moving to these monthly release versions over the course of this year. And I expect that to continue into next year as well. Since summer this year, we've had more clients on these monthly release versions than on our unsupported versions. And that gap, as you can see, continues to widen. We also have another group of clients on our limited support versions. So that's 15.0, 15.1, and 16.0. And that's the line at the bottom of that graph on the left. So although not a lot of movement this year on those versions, I do expect that to start dropping next year. As I mentioned, their end of life is also coming at the end of 2021. But that's not the full story. It's not just about getting clients onto the right versions. It's about what the clients do once they're on those versions. And that's exactly what you're going to hear from Prakash and the team today. Once you're on the correct versions, how do you stay up to date? You can see on the graph on the right, we also have a good trend of clients that once they get onto these good versions, they're also adopting these monthly releases. With more clients adopting and planning to adopt, and to make at least one monthly release rebase in their first year. This one is a bit more volatile than the other graph, but that's because clients, once they go live and get onto these versions, they're still finding their feet and making their preparations. And the year one after the upgrade tends to be very much, as I say, finding their feet and establishing a practice and a cadence. So that's it for my updates. I'll now pass back to Prakash for the rest of the presentation. I'm going to hang around and happy to take any questions at the end. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Thanks very much for that insight. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the second part of the webinar, which is to talk about the accelerator. Now, anybody who's done an upgrade, Calypso upgrade, can urge that it can be a complex and a time-consuming experience. And there are a number of factors that can contribute to that complexity and that effort that is required. By far, the largest is going to be the amount of customization you have in your Calypso instance. As I always tell, Calypso gives a lot of flexibility and a lot of power in terms of its open APIs and allows clients to customize and integrate Calypso to their ecosystem as required. But if we not use that flexibility and power with some responsibility, then typically we end up with instances of Calypso that do not lend themselves naturally to an upgrade process. As a result, clients put off upgrading, which means there's more customization because they would still need new functionality, new regulatory compliance, and everything else. So it's kind of becomes a snowball effect. And hence, Calypso have come up with this project methodology that Mark just took us through. And Luxoft have been championing the methodology, and we've been working on creating an accelerator, which you shall see in a moment, and see how it's going to help you to do Calypso upgrades faster, cheaper, and better. First and foremost, there is no silver bullet. There's no magic pill that can just move clients from whatever version they are onto version 16 or one of the Project Simplify compatible versions of Calypso. So we have to go through the one-off upgrade. But with the accelerator and with the new methodology in place, what this enables clients is to make sure they create an ecosystem, certain artifacts, through DevOps, through CI/CD, through REST automation, create a development process that makes the upgrade process a lot easier. Okay. Now, so what I'm saying here is that any client who wants to be Project Simplify enabled, they would still have to go through a one-off upgrade. Okay, so as I said, this is where you create all the artifacts, all those process changes you need to make to simplify the upgrades going forward. And I've put some indicative timelines. For example, a one-off upgrade, I'm calling it, could take anywhere from 3 to 9 months. But of course, that depends on a number of factors. How mature your development process is, how mature is your test automation. Are you users of DevOps, for example, and the likes. And what are the mechanisms you have in place to bring efficiency into your release process. But of course, every client is different, so which is why I want to say that is an indicative number. But once you've gone through that one-off upgrade and are on a Project Simplify compatible version, with our accelerator, you can see the time and the effort you need to put to upgrade Calypso from then on significantly reduces. So instead of spending months and months doing an upgrade, you spend days doing the technical upgrades. Okay, and I'm going to walk you through the Calypso's the accelerator that we've built for Simplify, and you will see how it kind of cuts through every single activity we typically perform to do an upgrade, and how it simplifies, how it brings an element of automation to it. So let's look at what does this accelerator gives us, right? So it as I said, it cuts through every single aspect of a Calypso upgrade. Now, starting from checking, what's the latest version of Calypso for me, as in for that particular client. So the tool can automatically connect to the Calypso's help desk and then check, what version you have. It also has the capability to download the right binaries depending on what you want to install. And it allows you to also deploy those binaries onto a test environment. After that, the tool, the real power of the tool, that's when it kicks in. So it can then look at your environment specifically and compare to the recommendations from Calypso and recommendation from us as to, do you have the right infrastructure? Is your configuration optimal? Do you have the right JDK, JRE, for example? Do you have the right operating system? Do you have the right security patches? So it compares everything that you need to be concerned about with an upgrade, and then gives you a detailed report and suggests changes where required. And then it also kind of does a client-specific checks and compares the two sets of binaries, if you like, and gives you an in-depth, detailed release notes. This is on top of what Calypso already gives as release notes in terms of what APIs changed and how it could impact your implementation. And then we go through to the custom code analysis, which is where the tool is capable of going through or scanning through every line of code that you've written to integrate, to extend, or to customize a functionality. And then comes up with a report as to what needs to change, not just the APIs that have been deprecated or dropped. It also recommends alternatives as to you need to replace method A with method B, for example. And of course, we then go through the build and deploy process into an environment, and then we go through the usual test cycles. Okay. And we'll see how the tool can integrate to your existing test automation solution. During this demo, we're going to show you Calypso Scat and how this accelerator integrates with it. And we all talk about everything from non-functional to non-functional testing. And I'll talk about testing itself in a bit more detail when we do the demo. So rather than theoretically talking about the accelerator and saying it can do this and do that, I think it's probably best if we show how it can do all the things that I've been mentioning. So Madhavi, could you please, I'm going to stop sharing now. Can you share your screen and bring up the toolkit, please?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone.
Thank you, Madhavi. Okay, so this pretty much looks like the slide I was sharing. So it literally shows the big blocks of work that we need to do typically to perform an upgrade. So the first box, as I said, is literally just there to check what's the latest version for me, and it uses the Calypso client's help desk credentials to go and check what's there, and you can initiate a build, a download and a deploy just by clicking on that link. But I'm going to assume, for the sake of simplicity for this demo, that we do have the latest offering from Calypso downloaded and installed. If you look at the bottom right of the screen here, so it's currently telling you my baseline version, as in the production version that I'm on, is 16.1.036. Right? And the target version I'm aspiring to upgrade to is .56. Okay, so there is a baseline environment, and there is a target version that we need to move to, and then let's see what does the accelerator do to help us in the journey. So if we move on to the next block there, which is the infrastructure and the configuration comparison. So there are a number of things that can cause us problems when we are doing an upgrade, and some of these things gets ignored, and you find it towards the end of your testing phases, or sometimes even when you've gone live when you've hit an issue. So because we've been doing upgrades for 15, 16 years now, and working very closely with Calypso as well, what can go wrong? So we've taken pretty much everything that you need to be wary of, and try to put some early checks in place. So as an example, if you look at the hardware and software icon there, you can just click compare. And of course, it has intelligent data driving this, which says for the .56, I need to have certain amount of disk space, memory, however many CPU cores I need, and whether it's a 64-bit architecture or a 32-bit architecture. It's got all those checks in there. And what you're seeing is not exhaustive list, but it just to give you an example of how it is comparing the recommended infrastructure for that version and what's on your test environment, and whether it matches, passes, or doesn't match, right? So of course, it's an early indication that we may not have enough kit, or we may not have the right kit, for example, for the new version. If you switch back to the dashboard, Madhavi, please. Okay, yep. And then you could do similar checks on the infrastructure for both the database server and on the data server kit itself. And then if you look at the engine configuration, as an example again, this looks at all the engines that are in your environment, both baseline and the target, and see if there is anything different. I mean, if you have done a Calypso upgrade, you would know there are many times we to our surprise, we see that an engine suddenly subscribing to an event that it didn't subscribe before, and causing us behavior that we don't expect functionally, or vice versa, and an event's been taken out of subscription. So which is why this check is there. So it looks at every engine out there and checks, do I have the same events being subscribed to. So if there is any differences, any mismatches, it's get highlighted so that you could get late. And this kind of checks continuous. It's not just infrastructure, it's not just engines, but it goes through the cache limits, for example, engine parameters, your JBoss app server itself, how is it configured, user property files, am I missing a property file, for example, or is there a new property being introduced? And then I'm going to pick on static and reference data. When you upgrade from one version to another version of Calypso, it is possible that Calypso have introduced new attributes on your legal entity, static objects, for example, or reference data is changed in its structure. So now this actually looks at your data between the two environments, and as a result of the upgrade, what's changed, if anything. So if there are new columns, for example, it will pick up. If there are mandatory columns that needs populating, it picks up. And if there is anything that's changed between the two versions, it picks up. So if we focus on the first 3 or 4 lines there, where there is a unmatch or mismatch being reported, you can see the rounding for certain currencies has been changed. Now, of course, from my own experience, I've seen such kind of issues you will never pick up until you go into testing. But with this tool, you can pick it up. I know changing the rounding precision, for example, is going to cause me problems in terms of matching the numbers later. So I'll have to understand why that's changed and make any necessary changes. Okay, so if we switch back, and then the last thing there is the database schema itself. So if we, what that does is essentially compare the two schemas, the baseline and the target version, and comes up with a detailed report as to what's changed in terms of the table structure. Are there any new columns, any dropped columns? It even looks at stored procedures, for that matter. It looks at the index or indices as well. And again, I've seen with large Calypso implementations, clients do create custom index or indices, and with an upgrade, you may lose it times, and then you won't realize it until you've gone live, and then one of your batch processes is running forever, or one of the user reports never returns, right? So again, this is where it picks up everything, even if it's a small change to an index or an index disappearing as a result of upgrading your database schema. So as you see that this is quite powerful in itself already. So it's trying to go through everything that can go wrong, everything that can be changed as part of your upgrade, and making you think about, is that right? Or if it is right, what do I do to test it to make sure it hasn't caused any adverse effect on the functionality. Okay, so then let's move on to the next block, next section. So we've done the infrastructure check, we've checked everything, static data, reference data, database schema, everything is good, or I made some changes, happy, I know what it is. And then we go to the next stage of checking a bit further as to what's changed in this release from Calypso. Of course, Calypso gives you a standard release notes, as I said, and it's right at the bottom there. You could click on that, and it brings you the release notes from Calypso for that version, that specific version. But there are times when you are using third-party libraries, modules, your own custom jar files, for example. As an example, there is Calypso scat itself there. So you could select those modules and say, I want to compare them to in light of the new deployed version. So when you do that, it does the jar comparison and comes up with a release notes very similar to what Calypso gives you, but this is tailored or custom made to your specific environment. So as you can see, it's calling out how many new methods are there, how many methods have been taken out, is there a data type change, is there a method signature change, so on and so forth. Now, this in itself is good. It's very powerful, of course. But what we do is we kind of take this metadata and put that into a separate schema that that the accelerator will use, which comes handy when we go to the next stage, which is looking at our custom code. Now, if you look, when we go into the custom code analysis, as I was saying, it literally goes through every line of custom code you've written, and then compares that to the API changes that we just kind of captured, and it gives you what changes you need to make for your custom code. And it doesn't only just highlight, there are 10, 20 class files that need changing, but it also tells you what's the suggested replacement. As you're seeing right at the top there, there is an abstract formatter method that's been taken out or I think removed, and it is now telling you in the last column, you should be going into your code and change it to the new method, which is include unknown, for example. And of course, there are no references to that method. But if you look at some of the other examples where the methods that are being removed or deprecated are being used in your custom code, it tells you how many instances it's been used. And if you click on that number, it gives you a list of all the class files and what change you need to make. Now we've stopped at that point in time. We didn't want the tool to go ahead and make those changes because we want human intervention in there to see, is that the right thing to do, and also think about what's the impact as a result. Or have I used this elsewhere? Do I need to kind of think about doing additional testing? So we've stopped there, but this in itself is very, very useful, where it is going through every custom class file and telling you what change, if any, you need to make as a result of the upgrade you're doing. Okay, so that's custom code reports, and of course, we are now got to assume that somebody goes and makes those changes. One thing I must tell you is, we've used the continuous integration CI/CD across everything we are doing as part of this tool. So when you go into the build and deploy, of course, there's a setup. You build your Calypso application, including the custom code, and then there is valid build validation, and there is the deployment and pre-build, pre-deploy substitution, and any kind of scripts that you want to run to fix your or upload your static and reference data as well. It's all automated. You could trigger it from here manually, but you could also configure it to kind of do it automatically daily or some other frequency that you prefer. We've done that, and now obviously, if you're using continuous integration, you would have an element of validation, making sure that the basic functionality is working. But I'm going to focus more around some of the structured control testing phases that you typically go through during an upgrade. So let's look at the system test. Obviously, if you click on that box there, it gives you the test packs available, automated test packs. That is, that you want to just test the Calypso to its boundaries, if you like. And for the demo purposes, there's only a handful of test scenarios, but you can click run. So what this is doing is, now this is integrating into Calypso's cat, and it is executing the test suite or test pack behind the scenes. And of course, you can go into cat itself to see what's happening. And when the execution finishes of those 3 scripts in this case, you will see the status gets updated back in the dashboard as well. Okay, so and while it is running, it's worth mentioning that if you already have a test automation capability built in, but using something other than a cat, that is fine too. We've got open APIs for the accelerator, which means it can plug in to it in most cases. So as you see here now, the test cases have finished running and they've all passed. So essentially, that's a tick in the box on the system testing phase. If we switch back to the dashboard now, of course, similarly, we go through the functional regression test. Again, now this is where you probably line up all the systems front to back. You set the business dates, and you align the data in each of the system. And then you typically run an intraday and then a pre-end of day checks, your overnight batch. And then again, you compare all the downstream reports and feeds that comes out of it. You also look at all the log files in some cases. You also look at all the messages being produced. You compare them. So we have a lot of enhanced tasks and toolkit there to augment what Calypso gives out of the box for CAT to make things easier to test those things. But at the end of the day, it is just plumbed into Calypso's CAT for the demo purposes. And then the final task there, which we typically see being ignored because there's so much to do as part of the upgrade and there are so many issues during testing, the non-functional testing. This is about the user experience. It's about the performance and scalability of applications. Right? So we've used CAT, but we've also kind of extended its list of tasks available to do things which are very useful, or things like simulating user load. How do I create, I don't know, 100 concurrent users on the system, and each user doing different things? Some users on task station, some users on front office workstation, some users running detailed reports somewhere, and we've created things which you can use to simulate production-like environment in terms of stressing the system with transactional and user volume. So you can say, for example, publish a certain number of trades per second or per minute, or life cycle events as well. So again, it's taken into account the non-functional side of it as well. So you should you should see that it's in the design right from the beginning. Non-functional testing is not an afterthought. Okay, so that's pretty much, as you can see here, this tool kind of gives you a hand. It kind of helps you navigate through every one of those key blocks that you need to go through for an upgrade. And pretty much within each phase, it kind of brings in automation, it brings in checks to make sure we find any issues, any discrepancies as early in the life cycle as possible, so that we can fix it quicker, and which means it will be a lot cheaper and efficient to fix it at that stage rather than leaving it till late. So I'm going to now switch back to the slide deck. So thank you, Madhavi, for doing that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, so what that means is, all the things you need to do about checking, making it compatible and testing your Calypso and everything else. If you are on 15.2 or above and you followed the recommendation in terms of the methodology and the process changes that we suggest you make, the monthly upgrades become a reality. We already have clients who use monthly releases for their BAU work, and while some clients would think a monthly releases may be too much, that's fine. But at least having this methodology from Calypso for Project Simplify and having an accelerator that you've just seen makes it possible for you to do regular upgrades, even if it is once a quarter, once every 6 months. But at least you are closely aligned to a supported version of Calypso, making use of the new features as and when they're released by Calypso, which in turn actually helps you reduce your custom code, and the need for you to reinvent the wheel and go with best practice and industry standard implementations. This should, in theory, drive you towards a leaner and a cleaner implementation of Calypso 2, yielding in some of the benefits that Mark alluded to in terms of reduced TCO and other benefits as well. Okay, I'm going to stop there. So you've just seen an overview of Project Simplify methodology. You've also seen an accelerator that we've built in action as well. So I'm going to open the floor for any questions that you may have for Mark and me. Okay, I've got some questions here. So let me read that up. Okay. So Mark, this one is probably for you. When you launch the next major Calypso version in 2022, when are you expecting clients to transition to that version in this new model?
Okay, so I think version 17, as it will be called, will obviously contain some new things, some new shiny value add stuff for the Calypso software. And that's obviously the big reason why we still launch new major versions, is to get those out there. So we do expect and hope that there's going to be good client demand for them as they come out in version 17. And therefore, I do hope and expect there's going to be a good uptake as it gets launched in 2022. In terms of how you approach that, I think there's a few different ways to consider it. And it really depends on where you stand as you approach the end of 2021 and how your rebasing is going. If you're not actively rebasing or not on 16.1 yet, then the best approach is going to be to invest in getting that upgrade and rebase practice going next year, much as you've just described, Prakash. This will then it's going to put you in a good place to take version 17 when it arrives in 2022, but also it takes the pressure off your next steps as you approach the end of 2021, knowing that you're on a version that's going to continue to exist for another 2 years. Once you're on version 16.1 next year, then you've really got a choice. And when you take the next major version, like I was saying earlier, you can look at the new things that we're adding into version 17 and decide for yourselves if you're really going to need it straight away or not. If not, then you're perfectly fine to remain on version 16.1 for those 2 extra years. I think it's also worth remembering that if you are actively rebasing, then the move to version 17 is going to be a much smaller effort than the previous major version upgrades that you're used to. Like I said at the start, with these monthly releases, you're adopting our evolutions as we release them over time. All these evolutions are building towards that next major version, version 17 in this case. So then by the time you get there, that upgrade is going to be much smaller because you've already tested and deployed the bulk of what's in that version 17. So I guess to wrap up and finish, I'd say my recommendation is to get onto 16.1 in the next 12 months if you haven't already. Get that rebase practice active, going, refine it, and then that puts the decision into your shoes when you take version 17 and becomes a business-driven exercise rather than a forced exercise.
Sure. Thank you, Mark. The next question I'm picking on is, will Project Simplify change how you work with clients? I think that's for us, I guess, to Calypso-Luxoft, from big upgrade projects to more regular touch points, hand-holding clients on their rebasing needs. Absolutely. I think we'll be doing both, to be honest. I think there will be a lot of clients who need help with the one-off upgrades that they need to do, because we know there are clients who are, still on version 13s and 14s, moving on from anything version prior to 14. We know it is a significant architectural jump. So we will continue to provide assistance on the big upgrade projects, but we recommend clients using that upgrades to kind of adopt to the project simplification, which means the future upgrades, yes, we only have to kind of do regular touch points, hand-holding where there is required, or in most cases, I expect the clients to be able to use this accelerator and do the rebasing themselves more frequently. Okay, there's another question here, Mark, for you probably. Is it compulsory for clients to adopt Project Simplify, or do you envisage that some clients will never adopt this agile methodology?
So I guess the easiest answer for me to say to that is yes, it's compulsory, and that makes my life a lot easier. But I think it's it's a bit more complex and there's more detail to it than that. I'd like to think that the benefits that we're describing here convince the clients that it's the right thing to do anyway. And like I said, majority of the times, or all of the time, I'm talking to clients, they get the concept, they like the approach. It's just about achieving it. I think the compulsory aspect of this operating model it comes down to how we deliver your specific fixes that you need specifically for your business. Our policy now states that we'll continue to deliver critical fixes to you directly via these hot fixes directly on top of your current production version. So very much like the client patches of old. We want to focus on delivering those on recent versions of the software. We see the risk of problems increasing a lot when we start doing that on older versions, on older code. And that's where our requirement for one rebase a year at least kicks in. We're going to fix your issues in future monthly releases anyway. We'll always support you and fix your issues in these monthly releases. But if you want to get them into production quickly for critical issues via this hot fix approach, then you really need to remain in that 12-month window so we can deliver those fixes in a safe and secure way. So I think it's a fair ask to clients, especially with the flexibility that we're giving in terms of how many times you rebase. We're not asking you to do it 4 times a year, 12 times a year, anywhere between 1 and 12 times a year. Also, when you move through the major versions, again, the choice is yours. So I think if you embrace this, then you can turn that that previously dreaded Calypso upgrade cycle into a BAU event, and it will also allow you to add value to your business going forward. So I don't want to use the compulsory sort of aspect of it. I'd like to think that clients are going to see the benefits and get the benefits of it. But there is a reason for why we're doing that.
Sure. Thank you. And then there's one last question that, together with the DXE accelerator, is there a special DXE Simplify offering? Absolutely. So we've been working on this accelerator for a while now, ever since Calypso mentioned this methodology in the Calypso user conference last year in Paris. So we've been working on this one. This is already, we've been testing this aggressively. We're now doing a demo of this tool to a lot of our existing clients and prospective clients. So we do expect now the accelerator to become part and parcel of what we offer in within the upgrade space for us. And you've seen the benefits. Mark alluded to this not being a compulsory thing, but the benefits outweigh. I don't see why anybody needs to be pushed, right? I think The benefits are there for everybody to see by being close to the latest offering from the vendor. And then with the use of an accelerator, it's not just the upgrades that benefit. Every BAU release, every other functional release you make significantly shrinks in terms of the effort you need to spend. Your testing phases will significantly reduce. Quality of the testing will improve as well. As a result, your TCO will go down. So absolutely. So the answer is yes. We are offering Project Simplify Accelerator as part of anything and everything we do in the upgrade space. Don't think we have any other questions. No, that's it. Okay, I think there are no other questions, so that leaves me to thank Mark for joining us today and giving us the insight into the project simplification, and to Philippe for being part of this, and to Tatiana, and of course Madhavi for doing the demo seamlessly and not throwing up any surprises there. Thank you, Madhavi. Back to you, Tatiana.
Thank you everyone for joining the session today. We hope you found it informative. If you'd like to have any further discussion on how you can get started, you can reach out to Prakash at Luxoft or your regular contact person at Calypso. We will now close this webinar, and we wish all of you a very good rest of your day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.